We've now ranked every first, second, third, and last place at Eurovision, as well as every null point. Today we're going to continue that onto fourth places. And once again, we're hitting onto some big favourites that you'll probably remember, even if you're not a big Eurovision fan. So make sure you don't go anywhere. As always, make sure to like the video if you enjoy it, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well, and you can find all of my socials in the description. I've got a lot coming over the next Eurovision season, so you're not going to want to miss a thing. As well as that, you can financially support me here on YouTube or on Patreon if you like, and you can find the details of that in the description too. Now, it's been a tough off-season for Eurofans and a bit of a bizarre one as well. In the last few weeks, we've had Bhutan randomly deciding that there's going to be a Eurovision Asia and starting up a national final to select a song for it. That competition doesn't exist. But what you can do if you like is set your location to Bhutan using Surfshark VPN, today's sponsor. Surfshark has over 3,200 servers in more than 100 countries, and they're high speed, so you'll never have to worry about buffering. If you're in the US, you can use Surfshark to watch Eurovision on YouTube rather than having to pay for Peacock instead. I'm expecting to be traveling a lot during Eurovision season as well, and it's nice to know that I'll be able to keep watching the same shows I watch at home while I'm on the go. No matter where I am in Europe, I'll get to hold on to my UK Netflix. Speaking of the UK, Surfshark also gives the added benefit of being able to use the internet without Keir Starmer and his mates personally inspecting your ID first. And it'll protect your activity online from their prying eyes as well as everyone else's. In addition to that, with data companies and corporations gathering as much data about us as they possibly can, Surfshark can give you peace of mind by blocking ads and trackers as well as keeping all your web activity anonymous. I can't recommend Surfshark enough, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if it's not for you, there's no risk. Go to surfshark.com/ESCGabe or use code ESCGabe at checkout, and you'll get 4 extra months free of Surfshark. Now it's time for our first entry on the list. That's Hadis from Turkey in 2009 with her song Dum Tek Tek. Can you feel the rhythm in my heart? It's weird to think that it's been almost 15 years since Turkey left Eurovision now, and it makes it easy to forget just how much of a powerhouse they were in the 2000s. Hadis showed up to Eurovision 2009 with a throat that was hoarse, as well as a 40-degree fever, and still delivered a performance that makes her feel not at all out of place on this list. Watching it, you can tell once you're looking for it how quickly she's running out of breath and how much she's leaning on her backing vocalists. But you can hardly fault her for that given the circumstances. At this time in the contest, pre-recorded backing vocals were not allowed. What that meant was all of the backing vocalists were on stage, leading to this amusing situation where you have 3 female backing vocalists who are all dressed in a similar way to Hadis, and one guy who just showed up in his shirt and jeans. This is a little jarring, but I guess it was the only way that you could make the backdrop to Hadis symmetrical and have all of the backing singers on stage. They could have at least dressed him in red though. This one is quite special to me because 2009 was the first Eurovision that I watched in full. Because of that, this kind of ethno-pop, despite the fact it was a well-trodden route in the contest at the time, was totally new and fresh for me. It was something brand new. In addition to that, I remember being totally bewitched by Hadis herself in the kind of innocent wow kind of way that all of us will remember feeling when we were young kids. Because of that, this song does hold a special place in my heart, because listening to it and watching the performance makes me remember my first Eurovision so vividly. Overall, we're starting this video really strong, and it's going to be an A tier for this. It's a great song, it has a special meaning for me, and I would have loved to see Turkey stay in the contest and bring more like this into the 2010s. Turkey is where we're staying for our next song. That was Kenan Doğulu with his song Shake It Up Şekerim from 2007. Shake it up, shake it. Lovey-dovey, lovey-dovey all the time. I got lots of candy for you. Okay then. Turkey and Greece were the undisputed kings of ethnopop in the 2000s in Eurovision. To avoid the arguments in the comments section, I will not be picking one or the other as better. You should definitely let me know in those comments though, which of these songs in this video is your favourite. Unfortunately for this specific song, it's not one of the ones I remember quite so fondly. With the obvious caveat that I do have a well-documented bias against the 2000s, and I watched all of these contests well after the fact because I was simply too young to understand the contest at that time, it still just doesn't feel like it stands up to the best of the era. If you put this against the song we just talked about, Dum Tek Tek, or the song that won for Turkey, which was Sertab Erener's Every Way That I Can, this simply doesn't stand up. It doesn't get close. It just isn't on the same level. It's slick, of course, because that was part of the trademarks of these songs in this era, but it just doesn't have the meat on the bones that the others do. At least the hook is catchy. Shake it up, shake it in. Tell me what you're feeling. With that in mind, C tier feels like the right placement for now. It's not bad, it's just not quite ticking the right boxes for me. Next up is 2004, and 3 songs in a row from Turkey. Are you for real? Get it? Because the song's called... Play the video! Unfortunately, this is the kind of music that's just not up my street at all. Turkey has sent some great bands to the contest, whether that be Morfe Ötesi or Manga, but for me, this one just doesn't fit into the same bracket. Much as I love a good trombone, you're just not going to get away from the fact that I just intensely dislike ska music. What I will say in its defense is that at the very least, it had the kind of crowd that it needed to work on stage. That's because this one was a home entry. That meant they really got into it and it added a lot of energy to the performance. I know as well that a lot of people feel a bit of nostalgia for the bygone era of Eurovision where you would see this sea of flags in the crowd. And it is fun to see all of the Turkish flags waving in rhythm to this song. As something that's not at all to my taste, I do unfortunately have to push it pretty far down. But that's not necessarily the fault of the artist. It is just not for me, and I'm sure there'll be someone out there watching this who has this as their favourite of the whole lot. D tier is the placement, and we'll go on to the next one. We're leaping forward now to 2015, and Loïc Notet, who represented Belgium with the song Rhythm Inside.
And if we die tomorrow, what do we have to show?
This one feels particularly relevant, given that there have been rumours that Loïc will be returning to the contest in 2026. He's had 11 years in the meantime to develop as an artist, and I'd be really fascinated to see what he brings this time. Maybe he could bring back Suri as well, because in addition to participating for the UK in 2018, she's also one of the backing singers in this performance. I am a massive fan of this, though, for a whole wide set of reasons. Firstly is the obvious, which is that this is a really unique song among Eurovision entries. There isn't much like this. It's aged well, and if it were sent to the contest this year, I think it would still challenge for the top 5. In addition, Loïc's performance is completely perfect, which is especially impressive considering his young age at the time, and his voice is genuinely incredible. What you might have not known about this, though, is that Loïc was basically in charge of everything to do with this performance. He wrote this song alone at the age of 18, and then did the entire choreo and staging himself too. For someone of that age to have such a clear and defined vision of how they want their performance to be, and then to be able to execute that vision so well, is genuinely prodigiously impressive. It goes to show just how extraordinarily talented he was at that time. The one thing that stopped this getting any higher from 4th in 2015 is that it is still experimental pop to a degree, and that is naturally going to make it divisive. In addition to that, he had the Opera Italians, Please Ignore the Annexation of Crimea, and Swedish Bachelor of the Year 2025 to compete against. Luckily, those factors do not come into play on this list. I went back and forth on this on whether I should put it in A tier or S tier, but ultimately, I've decided to put it in S. I'd be really interested to see what Loïc can do with a decade more of honing his craft, so I'm fascinated to see if we get a rerun in 2026. Let's move on to 2003 and Norway. Jostein Hasselgaard with his song, I'm Not Afraid to Move On.
'Cause I'm in love with a beautiful girl.
The 2000s in Eurovision brought us a whole bunch of dudes wearing whatever they happened to pull out their cupboard on the day of the show, just kind of showing up and singing their song. This is one such example of that. We're gonna have to smack the early 2000s bias klaxon again very early on here, because the videos of this performance are full of comments from years ago saying how great it is, and I cannot for the life of me find a good reason to listen to it again for any purpose other than trying to find some distinguishing feature for this video. It's a nice enough ballad. It's fine. It's really nothing particularly special, and it's not like this era of the contest didn't have good ballads. This is just one of those songs that for me gets washed out of your memory the second you hear something else. It has no staying power, and for that reason, D tier is where it's going to be going today. We're jumping forward again now, and it's 2019. That was Switzerland with Luca Hänni and his song, She Got Me.
She got me dirty dancing, dirty dancing.
This song represents one of the biggest 180-degree reversals in fortune in the contest's history. We went from an utterly honking record of 2 qualifications in 13 attempts for the Swiss to 6 finals in 6 contests with 4 top 10s and a victory. Luca Hänni was the one who set it all rolling, and he was a genuine contender for the win in 2019 as well. I really can't understate just how much of a quantum leap forward this was. After years of mediocrity and Rika getting her squats in, This stood in such stark contrast. It was slick, it was thought through, and more than anything else, it felt genuinely modern. It's one of the songs that represent the big jump in quality in the contest in the late 2010s and early 2020s, as well as some of the best Swedish written and produced pop that we've seen in some time. With all of that in mind though, none of that would matter if the performer couldn't deliver the song. Luckily, Luca demonstrated that was not a concern. Don't get me wrong, I am not sure his vocal was amazing on the day, but he does more than enough to sell it. And other than that, he got just about everything right. This one is going into A tier for me, and I genuinely think it's one of the best entries of 2019. Had it managed to win the contest, it would not have been out of place at all. 2008 and Armenia is next. That was Sirusho with her song Kele Kele.
Kele, 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 kele.
This is the first of 2 Armenian songs in this video, and somehow this is still their best result to this day. Although they did score more points on one occasion in the new system where twice as many were available. That said, given the quality of some of Armenia's entries, it's a crime that they've never been in the top 3. As for this one, like with many of the 2000s songs in this video, we're back in ethno-pop territory again. And this one is definitely one of the ones more fondly remembered by fans who were watching the contest at the time. I agree that it's a good song and performance. I'm not sure though whether it's among the best examples of this style. I know this is controversial, so let me say some things I really like about this first, because it does have some stuff that it does really well. The opening of this song in particular I find so striking. It grabs your attention from the first moment, and it shows off Sarusho's voice really well. If the entire song had that level of drama, it probably wouldn't be on this list because it would have finished higher up the scoreboard. There are some decisions that I don't quite understand though, like why you would pair a song that's meant to be energetic with such a flat, unenergetic choreo. The backing dancers are all dressed in black, and there's nowhere near enough colour in the staging. The backdrop of this literally looks like a 2000s Windows screensaver. I have to give Armenia its flowers for being in the middle at this point of a 5-year run of 5 top 10 finishes in their first 5 editions in the contest. But this is not my favourite of those 5, and it's not my favourite Armenian Eurovision entry overall. I recognise the legacy of this and the fondness with which it's still held by a lot of people, so I am going to put it into B tier just about. But I'm not inclined to go any higher than that. Next up is 2021 and Iceland. That was Dathi or Gagnamagnith with their song 10 Years.
We've been together for a decade now. Still afraid I am loving you more.
I really feel for 10 Years because it had the utterly impossible task of trying to live up to Think About Things. That was like asking someone to capture lightning in a bottle 2 years in a row and was always going to be essentially impossible. I remember when this was released and the reaction wasn't really exactly what you might have expected. A lot of people were disappointed by the fact that, unsurprisingly, it wasn't just like Think About Things. Among all of that, I think it's forgotten that 4th place is one of Iceland's best results ever. And this is a really catchy and actually very sweet song all in itself. It's also simultaneously silly and whimsical because that's what Dathi Frere does. And the staging plays into that as well. The 3 pianos joining together into one, the silly thumbs up on the line, everything about you I like, and the choreo in the chorus just makes this really fun. 10 Years is a love song, which is hardly unique subject matter, but in my opinion, it's one of the most touching love songs that we've heard in the contest. That's because it's 100% real. There's no committee of people rhyming fire and desire and then shipping it off to whatever singer will pay the most money for it. And there's no constructing a narrative with no lived experience to hang it on. It's just a love letter from a guy who really, really loves his wife and keeps on falling for her more. Without meaning to get mushy, I think a large part of my appreciation for this song now is because I'm in a relationship where I actually feel and relate to every word of this. I think it's totally natural for your perspective on a song to change on that basis. I will declare that there are very specific reasons why a song like this, on this subject matter, would appeal to me at this exact moment in my life, but you're going to have to check my other socials to see why, because there is someone in this flat right now who can definitely hear me filming this video, and I have some surprises that I really don't want to spoil. You may see some news within a couple of days of this video being released. In any case, because of all of this, it has to go on S tier. Is it for extremely soppy reasons? Yes. Am I sorry for that? Absolutely not. Next up, it's Shanae and The Evergreen with their song In a Moment Like This.
In a moment like this, wanna know what you're looking for.
God almighty. This is what people who hate Eurovision think Eurovision sounds like. Some songs just age horribly, but let's not pretend that this was in any way modern or non-cliche in 2010. If you told me that this had been generated by a 2-line AI prompt demanding the most generic 2000s power ballad about love imaginable, you'd probably get this, or alternatively, Running Scared from 2011. They're on the same tier for me. At least this one didn't commit the ultimate offense by winning while being utterly insufferable. There is also an elephant in the room here, which is that this sounds a whole lot like Every Breath You Take by The Police. Like, more than enough for me to be suspicious and hold it down even further as a result. I don't know what was with Denmark at the time, because they actually sent a basically identical spiel in 2009. I guess they figured it worked for them then, so they'd try it again, and to be fair, I guess it did work even better. I should say that these two obviously can sing well, and I particularly like Sinead's voice, but I just dislike this song way too much to pull it out of F tier. That's where it unfortunately has to go. Now we're jumping forward to 2013 and Norway. Margaret Berger with I Feed You My Love.
Take my hand. I trust your word.
I don't know what was in the water in 2013, but two of my favourite Eurovision songs of all time came in the top 4 of this contest. You had this song and you had Gravity by Zlata Ognjević. You were of course also joined by Only Teardrops by Emily de Forest and then Hold Me by Farid Mamadov. Honestly, Farid Mamadov in this top 4 is like Big Bird at the boardroom table. Getting back to Margaret Berger, I just think this song is amazing. I've always had a soft spot for your grittier, your darker pop, and this just ticks every possible box in that category for me. It has the same kind of vibe as something more modern, like We Appreciate Power by Grimes, but in a wild and unusual circumstance for Eurovision, this actually came several years before that, rather than arriving several years late and $1 short. Given how much I love this song and this edition in general, I'd be really curious to know if there's something about the editions you watch between the ages of, say, 14 and 17 that just makes them stick with you more. If that's the case for you, I'd really love to hear about it. When it came to Margaret's performance, honestly, I would really not change a single thing. You've got a pretty much bang-on vocal, and it's in the exact right kind of siren-esque style that this song really needs. You have Margaret presented in a way that just oozes presence and power. That extends from her position on stage right through to the choices they made in the wardrobe. And for some reason as well, the really prominent drums on this track just scratch all the right itches for me too. It just fits together perfectly. It is presumably obvious that I'm going to put this in S tier, given it's one of my favourite Eurovision entries of all time, and I would have dearly loved that either this or Zlata could have won in 2013. Next is 2017 and Belgium. That was Blanche with her song City Lights. Prior to Eurovision, Blanche's entire experience of performing to a TV audience was making it to week 2 on The Voice and then being eliminated. Therefore, it's very understandable that on stage, she is clearly shitting herself with nerves. Quite frankly, almost anyone, including me, would feel the same way. There was actually a pretty big split on how this was received by the juries versus the public. With the juries, it did well, but still barely cleared 100. The public, meanwhile, absolutely loved it and awarded her more than 250 points. This kind of sums up how I feel about it as well. Based on vibes alone, it's great, but the performance was a little bit shaky. Like I said, that is understandable, but it does play a small factor on where it ends up. When it comes to the studio track, this is a solid pop song that can and did pull in a lot of radio play, and if it was released now, I'm sure it would do well streaming-wise too. It was pretty fresh for its time as well, and it hasn't aged badly. The funny thing is, it's a kind of familiar story for Belgium, where they have a song that is considered to be really good, and then the live performance flops and they non-qualify. That happened in 2018 and then 2024 and 2025. Maybe in some ways 2017 was a warning shot that they should look for more experienced vocalists before they get found out. All in all, I really can't hold that against Blanche though, who came and did a great job regardless in the result. Have we heard from her since? Basically no. But she's living her best life, she's studying cinema and filmmaking, and she is still making music too. It's a B tier for this today, but this was a success for her in every sense. Next up is Bulgaria 2016. That was Polly Genova with her song If Love Was a Crime. There are very few more iconic eras in modern Eurovision than Bulgaria returning to the contest in 2016, tryharding for a few years, withdrawing, tryharding again, then sending a man who is banned from entering Spain, finishing second last in the semi-final and immediately dying. Polly represents the start of that era of chaos and brought us one of the catchiest hooks in this video. That "O Dai mi lubavta" is so instantly memorable, and I think that was probably a major contributor to the success of this entry. Most of the rest of the lyrics are about as deep as a puddle, but it's not like this was proposing to be some kind of deep and meaningful ballad. It's fun and it's light, and we should approach this with that in mind. The other main thing that makes this song work so well is the charisma of Polly as a performer. She has charisma in buckets and it shows. And I just have so much time for the silly little dance she does with her legs in the chorus. The outfit lights up in the final part of the performance as well, because it's Eurovision, and of course it does. And having the backing singers come on stage at that point and just kind of let loose a bit really suits this down to the ground. It's much more this kind of thing that makes me miss Bulgaria in the contest than the kind of inorganic attempts that followed in 2018 in particular. In 2016, it didn't feel like there was a sense of presumption which did permeate a little from the delegation in subsequent years. A bit of innocent joy is honestly, I think, what we needed. So for that, it's going into A tier, and hopefully Bulgaria will be back soon to cause more chaos. Next, we're going to 2012 and Azerbaijan, where Sabina Babayeva participated with When the Music Dies.
When the music dies, it's all black and white.
In preparation for this video, I have reviewed Sabina's YouTube channel, with such gems as Sabina meets legendary Engelbert Humperdinck, and a cover of Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely, recorded with her phone about 4 inches away from her face, and with precisely 0 words fully enunciated.
Isn't she lovely?
In her defense, her actual song was better produced and performed than that. They took the traditional park and bark approach and kept things interesting with some coloured projections on her dress, as well as a guy yelling in the background periodically. That said, the yelling, fairly tuneful. Of Azerbaijan's 6 years of dubious success, SIM cards and buying songs from Swedes, this is probably one of the best songs of the bunch. Though that isn't exactly saying much given my opinion of most of the others. Sabina has a genuinely excellent voice, she does produce an effective performance, and the staging is slick enough. Do I find it a little unimaginative? Yes, probably, and again, this kind of thing is never really going to be for me. All of that means we are still going to have to strike a balance somewhere in the middle. I think C tier is probably a fair result for this. I don't mind it, I don't hate it, I just don't really love it either. Next is 2002. That year there was a tie for third, and officially no third place was registered. That said, since I only put one of the two in my third place ranking video, I'm putting the other one here. That was the UK, somehow, with Jessica Garlick and her song Come Back.
Baby, come back if you need me.
I'm not going to make many friends with this one, so I'm going to keep it brief. I have never liked this song, not even a little bit. It's part of that set of slow 90s and 2000s ballads that extended far beyond the contest, but nonetheless do absolutely nothing for me. And even the very best kinds of this song are just not interesting. At least for me. There's an element of biting the hand that feeds me here, since we didn't get another top 3 finish until Sam Ryder showed up 20 years later, but this just sends me to sleep. It engages me in precisely 0 ways. At least Jessica has a nice voice, so for that, it goes in D tier instead of F. But we should just move on. We're going very recent now, and that's with France in 2024. That was Slimane with his song Mon Amour. I've heard a lot of opinions on this opening shot, ranging from finding it very personal and emotional all the way through to, hey, I've been staring at you while you sleep. I'm leaning towards the latter camp. I do think it's a bit weird, but luckily it doesn't last for very long. The obvious strength of the performance, though, is Slimane's voice, and it's a smart staging decision to remove basically every possible distraction from that, as well as emphasizing it as much as you can. At the same time, this leaves us with a song that, when not being performed live, doesn't really have much to it. It's elevated massively when you see it on the stage, but it's just not interesting in and of itself. In that case, the thing to do is to focus on the live performance. And when that live performance came, Slimane's big moment was stepping back several steps from the microphone and belting out the first half of the final chorus. This is undoubtedly really impressive, and it shows the power in his voice really well. But I do wonder whether we're towing the line a little bit of being a little too on the nose. It's like we're being repeatedly told for 3 minutes, hey, This guy's voice is really great. Did you notice the guy's voice? The voice! Isn't it wonderful? Yes it is. He's one of the best vocalists probably in recent Eurovision history. But the song is still just a little bit basic. And that's what meant it landed in 4th instead of in the top 3. It didn't help either that, much like mine right now, Sleman's voice was burning out by the end of the week, and a voice crack in the jury show probably cost him a lot of points. Overall, it's good. The voice is great, it holds the slightly underwhelming song up, and the staging puts attention on the correct elements. It's just missing a slight something for me, and that means I'm going to put it in B tier. Let's move it on to the next one. We're going back to 2006 now, and Romania. That was Mihai Trastariu with his song Tornero. Of all the 2000s things, this is the most 2000s. The Eurodance beat, the badly fitting suit, and of course, nonsensical lyrics. It would take 100 experts 100 years to work out what exactly Mihai was trying to say. That's because when it comes to lines like every while and away, like when was together, I am as lost as you are. That's before we get to the highlight for me, which is in the bridge, where he utters the immortal line, I just really miss you when I want to kiss you. All that aside, credit where credit is due. This is really catchy, and he does hit the vast majority of the notes. It doesn't matter that this is horribly dated because it's so unashamedly of its time that it almost feels wrong to penalize it on that basis. It may fall considerably short of What Is Love or other songs that are its contemporaries in this genre, but that doesn't mean it's not fun, and it doesn't mean I haven't drunkenly danced to it at Eurovision events. That's because, inevitably, it still finds its way onto the playlist after all these years. For all of these reasons, I have to give Mihai his flowers and put him into B tier. It's a cult favourite among Eurovision fans, and it's probably going to stay that way. We still have several songs to go though, so let's keep moving. Next up is Marco Mangoni from Italy, who represented them in 2023 with his song Due Vite. This may be oversharing, but Marco Mangoni remains the only Eurovision artist who I have bumped into outside of a Wetherspoons at 10 AM while he's having a cigarette. I obviously immediately recognised him when I walked past, but given it was 10 AM, and at the time the idea of speaking to a Eurovision artist was terrifying to me, I simply nodded at him, which he reciprocated, and then walked away as quickly as I possibly could. This is a very Italian Eurovision entry, and it's a very Italian ballad. There's a positive in one sense here, in that Italian ballads generally do make very good use of their ultimate strengths. None more so than the fact that the Italian language is genuinely beautiful. As well as that, they're a formula that has been refined and perfected over many years. At the same time, that is kind of the drawback too. There are a lot of these styles of ballads, and they either end up in or near Eurovision for Italy every single year. We had the exact same thing from Mahmoud and Blanco just 12 months prior to this. Overall though, on this occasion, I am happy because it is such a good example of this style, and the emotion with which it was performed was genuinely palpable. You can see it in Marco's body language for much of the song, but it really becomes overwhelming towards the end. At that point, he's barely able to control it, to the point he's literally shaking and his voice is cracking. He collapses to his knees when the song finishes as well. You see something approaching this in Eurovision occasionally, but generally just as a kind of staging device, and there's not that sincere emotion behind it. To see this kind of raw emotion, unscripted and unplanned, is so much more powerful, and it sticks with the audience way more as a result. If you want another example from this year, JJ's unscripted grunt that he did just before the drop in Wasted Love is something a lot of people picked out as the moment where it kind of clicked for them. This is a great song, performed beautifully by an amazing singer. We should have had Plain Sailing from here. Unfortunately, for some reason, there's a completely unnecessary distraction in the background because someone somewhere decided that what this really needed was trampolines. I have absolutely no idea why these are there or why they made it to the final performance. Despite a minor trampoline penalty, I do still think this is really gorgeous though, and for that reason, it's going to go into A tier. That is probably also where it would have been with no trampolines at all. Before we move on to the next song, I should say you're gonna find that 2005 is missing from this list. That year, Israel came fourth, and quite frankly, while I've included them in these tier lists before, I just have zero interest at this point with engaging with any of their songs, or quite frankly, anything to do with them. Regardless of whether a song was released last week or 20 years ago, there's just no way I'm gonna do it. So let's just move straight past it to the next one. 2000 is next, and that's Estonia. Ines with her song Once in a Lifetime.
What you give is what you get. There ain't no regrets.
I love Estonia. I've been to Estonia probably about 10 times now. When this video releases, I will literally be in Estonia. But in all of those times, if there's one thing I've never associated with Estonia, It's cowboys. So why exactly was that the driving motivation behind Inez's outfit? I should defend her by saying, while this may look a bit naff now, it was a lot less unusual then. And given we were in the era of the Britney and Justin Timberlake double denim fit, this is hardly among the worst atrocities committed. Previously in my third place ranking video, I spoke very fondly of Runaway by Anna Sarleen, which went to the contest for Estonia in 2002. This song kind of feels like a bit of an early demo version of that. And that's not a coincidence, because Runaway was originally written for Inez by the same songwriters. What it also means though is that I do kind of prefer Runaway to this. It's a decent song and it's nice enough, but it just hasn't quite got that carefree, fun energy that I get from 2002. For that reason, it's going a little lower than that too, and that's going to be C tier. Hopefully Estonia will forgive me. Next, we're going to Sweden in 2022, which was Cornelia Jacobs with her song Hold Me Closer. If you know anyone who's either a teenager or in their 20s and depressed, this is probably their favourite song from 2022. Seriously though, there is nothing wrong with that, because there are a bunch of reasons why this is genuinely held in unique esteem among Swedish Eurovision entries by Eurovision fans. I made a whole video way back when I started this channel, where I talked about how many people, myself included, tend to find the Swedish approach a little too refined, too slick and too predictable. This song was like an antidote to all of that, and I think that only strengthens people's attachment to it. When you're going into a crowded field, which is what you're doing when you're writing a breakup song, it has to be really, really good to have sufficient staying power. That's because your audience will have been exposed to similar things many, many times before. Luckily, this song is indeed really, really good. In fact, as far as these kinds of songs go in Eurovision, this has a fair claim to being one of the best ever. Cornelia herself is just such a perfect message carrier for this song. The raspiness of her voice really lends itself to this kind of subject matter, and they did the smart thing of keeping the staging simple and elegant rather than trying to distract from that. That said, I would really recommend for this looking at the national final performance versus the Eurovision performance to see just how much worse the Italian broadcaster made it when they restaged it in Turin. I'm obviously not going to penalise her on that basis. Overall, this is just something that doesn't get old. It is beyond special, even more so at one of Cornelia's own concerts. I went to see her live about a year after she was in Eurovision, and this was genuinely an ethereal experience. S tier is an easy and obvious choice for this, and it can't go anywhere else. Germany is next, who finished 4th in 2018 with Michael Schulte and his song You Let Me Walk Alone.
I was born from one love of two hearts. We were 3 kids and a loving mom.
This result came deep in Germany's still ongoing era of utter disaster at the contest, and was flanked by a pair of 25th place finishes in 2017 and 2019. That said, as we saw in 2024 and 2025, when the circumstances are right, they can put something together, and that was what happened in 2018 too. Before the contest, this was mostly unheralded and not expected to travel high up the leaderboard. However, the way that they staged this elevated it so much. There was no LED screens in the stage at Eurovision in 2018, so the Germans found another solution. They had a giant inflatable projection screen that was wheeled onto stage and fully inflated in the 45 seconds before the song started. That meant, as well as Michael singing this song, which is a ballad about the loss of his father at a young age, we have projections, photographs of Michael and his father in the backdrop. This massively elevated the performance because it did something crucial that I've already mentioned in this video. It made the song feel real. This isn't just a workshopped ballad out of a songwriting camp. It's genuine to Michael, it's written by and for him, and he's telling his own story. Both juries and the public feel authenticity so much more keenly when it's more than just a song. I'll be first to admit that at the time, this really caught me off guard. I hadn't really felt much of a connection to this before I saw it live. But after the live performance, I was genuinely affected by it, and I think a lot of people felt the same way. What that resulted in was an 136-point haul from the public, which is Germany's best result from them since 2010. Overall, this took something that might have gone nowhere and took it as far as it possibly could have gone. And I do want to recognise that. For that reason, this is going to go onto A tier. I suspect it may be a long while before we see Germany on one of these lists again. Next is 2014 and Armenia. Aram MP3 with his song Not Alone.
You're not alone, no, yeah.
Ahead of the final in 2014, this was the favourite to win the contest, which is utterly insane to me. This song is extremely boring for the first 2 minutes of its runtime. It's literally just one long build-up and not a very interesting one. Then, after all of that boredom, it's suddenly really, really loud.
What if it's only one kiss?
Then it's boring again, and then it ends. with you shaken from your slumber, much in the same way you would be if a Tom and Jerry style Acme anvil fell out of the sky onto your foot. In essence, this is structured like Musty's Before the Party Is Over, except worse, with 2000% additional dubstep, which for me personally is about as welcome as the dulcet tones of Eden Golan. It's sung fine, but lyrically, it's hardly a masterpiece. There are only 126 words in this entire song. Of those, 24% are either you're, not, or alone. At least we're above I'm a survivor, stay aliver, but not by much. To me, this already felt like ridiculous nonsense 11 years ago, and it still does today. It's such a shame because Armenia's best entries are not the ones that we've had on this list. And unfortunately, this is just not even close to being one of those. It's going to go into F tier, and I want to move swiftly on. Next is 2011 and Ukraine. Mika Newton with her song, Angel. You didn't think we were going to get all the way through this video without a lyric reading, right? Let's take a look. When you look into my eyes, world becomes better place. When you look into my eyes, sun is touching mountain top. Here's an open offer to all Eurovision songwriters, delegations, and so on. From now on, you can get me to check the grammar of your songs for £5 Great British pounds. This song actually had a pretty rocky arrival to Eurovision. Mika Newton initially won the national final against, of all people, Jamala and Zlata Ognjevich, and then, amid allegations of irregularities in the voting, the Ukrainian broadcaster scheduled an additional runoff national final with just these three, but Jamala refused to participate and Zlata Ognjevich was busy on the day it was meant to take place. As a result, Mika ended up remaining the participant. Luckily, things ran a little smoother when we got to the contest. The song itself is honestly pretty unexceptional, and I haven't really heard many people look back on it as one of Ukraine's better entries of the 2010s. That is obviously an extremely tough competition, so there's no shame in that either. Luckily for Mika, there was one very clever ace up their sleeve. The backdrop to Mika's performance was created by a sand artist live on stage. This was a pretty impressive trick, but it did also mean that this is one of the Eurovision performances where focus on the singer was at a minimum. The background is almost always in view, and Mika really plays second fiddle to it. Every time I watch this performance, I find myself drawn to that rather than to the singer or the song. That's not necessarily a bad thing given that this gambit clearly worked because they're on this list, but it maybe says a little bit about how well the rest of the performance was holding up. All in all, I can't upgrade this that much based on a staging trick alone. Given that everything else is not bad but also not great, I'm going to put it into C tier for now. Let's move to the next one. That is France in 2001 with Natasha Saint-Pierre and her song Je n'ai que mon âme.
Même si tu dis que je fais partie de toi.
We are back in some of the territory I discussed earlier in this video. It's a slow ballad about heartbreak with nothing to distinguish it from other slow ballads about heartbreak. It's not a bad song. I will say that. There's nothing wrong with it, and Natasha's vocals are very good. She delivers it essentially perfectly, and that's not a given in any Eurovision song, especially in this period. I just can't find anything about it that piques my interest either in a positive or negative way. It's just a bit of a nothing burger. As a result, it's going into C tier, as is standard for such things. Let's move forward. It's tradition now to finish with the most recent year, and that is 2025, Sweden and Kai, with their song Bara Bada Bastu. It's honestly still pretty unbelievable for me that Kai have ended up on this list, given their seemingly unstoppable momentum in the run-up to the contest. Honestly, beforehand, I was completely convinced that they would coast to victory. In that sense, I made the classic error of believing fan bubble hype, which, to be honest, I had a hand myself in stirring up this time around. Kai had done the impossible by emerging from the Swedish selection with a song in Swedish, having beaten a favourite son of the Swedish pop industry in the form of Måns Zelmerlöw, who I am desperately resisting taking a second dig of the video at. Måns is really a key part of this story though, because he helps explain why this didn't end up the way we thought it would. At the Swedish national selection, Kai were plucky underdogs. They had come from nowhere with a silly song about a sauna, a giant sausage, and a dream. This instantly put them in the perfect position because they were an antidote to the established order and logic, which said that things would go the same way they always do in this kind of situation in Sweden. Måns France even beat them in the semi-final before that narrative really had a chance to take hold. When you come to the actual contest, that narrative has been flipped on its head. All of a sudden, Kai aren't underdogs, they're favourites. In fact, they were so heavily favoured in the odds in the run-up to the contest that we were hitting 2023 Loreen levels. In addition, they're no longer just representing Kai, they're representing Sweden. With that comes a level of expectation that no other country has in the contest. They were clear favourites, the shock factor was gone, and such was their momentum that they were known about by a lot of the audience ahead of time. A lot of viewers had already seen them on news broadcasts in their own country in the run-up to the show. Secondary to this was its relative lack of appeal outside of its home market. When it came to the public, this was meant to be a televote juggernaut. And it was, in the Nordic countries. When it came to Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Estonia, you're welcome for me calling you Nordic, it scored 58 out of a possible 60 from the public. Outside of that, it didn't manage to get a single 10 or 12. Admittedly, the presence of Israel's definitely legitimate nothing to see here televote does distort the picture slightly, but the point still stands. Once the references stop making sense, as they will do in countries that don't have a Nordic language and don't have a sauna culture, the appeal seems to fall off as well. It's a real shame because this is honestly one of the highlights of the video for me. It's one of Sweden's best efforts of recent years and a proper answer to the criticisms that I've talked about already. Most importantly, it demonstrates that they can deviate from their standard formula and still do really well in the contest. It was refreshing to find myself rooting for Sweden for the first time since 2022, and though I would have preferred someone else to win to avoid a second Swedish edition in 3 years, I certainly wouldn't have minded it. For all of these reasons, I'm going to put it at the very top of A tier. We need to wait and see whether it can make it into S based on its legacy. Kai will be fondly remembered, and I'd be shocked if we didn't see them as regular interval acts at Eurovision, at Melfest, and at UMK in the coming years. With that, we have reached the end of this video, and that means it's time for you to tell me all the ways in which I'm wrong. You can do that in the comments section. While you're there, you will actually pass the subscribe button by, and I'd encourage you to click it, as well as turning notifications on so you don't miss anything. My socials and my Patreon are in the description too. In the next 10 seconds, you're probably going to get a couple more suggestions about what you should watch next, and I'd encourage you to click on one of them, and I'll have lots more for you soon. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, take care, and I will see you soon.